Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today I want to talk about the Red Duke. You see, many of us want this character to be implemented as a proper legendary lord with his own unique start so we can actually play as him rather than confederate him. It's a very odd thing because this character has a very unique model, no unique voice lines however, but a unique model, and had a intro screen that was there since apparently Warhammer 1, it's just been hidden away in the files. So Creative Assembly clearly had plans at one point to use the Red Duke, and you never know for the future, and you know, it's a shame that we still don't have this character as a playable faction, as he was implemented, I believe, around the time of the Wood Elf DLC, is that correct? And it's a massive shame, because he's actually a really interesting character. While he should not be leading Musalon, because that's not his dukedom, many people know this character because he actually had a really good book known as the Red Duke, which gives him a bunch of backstory. Hell, he's got a lot more lore than a large majority of all the different legendary lords that we currently have in-game. If you're interested in the character and want to learn more about him, I'm not sure if the book is still available through Black Library, through ebook form, but if you try hard enough, it's very easy to find an ebook version online. Anyways, back to the actual character. So, should he ever become a proper playable character with his own start and everything, he would probably start in Musalon. So it's just a case of having him as a starting legendary lord rather than confederating him as normal. And you know, that's perfectly fine. There's already a landmark building there too, which kind of makes it a bit more interesting. Hell, they could even change that area to then be a one settlement province and then just add something else to Lyonesse just to give it 2 settlements. Now, we're going to talk about what could make this faction really unique, and some stuff has been mentioned in previous videos, that's true, but now with the Warriors of Chaos coming in with a rework, and how sub-factions now work there, sub-races, there's something really interesting there that could really make this faction stupidly unique, where the Red Duke could lead a really different vampire count faction with its own separate roster and loads of different things to make it feel like a dark Bretonian kingdom. What if you played as a vampire count faction, but a new one, an evil version of Bretonia, where your campaign would be to turn and twist Bretonia into its darkest state, where the Black Grail comes into effect, and those loyal to the lady must be turned into vampires. Yep, you can already kind of do this with Helm and Ghost, where you can just attack Bretonia and all that type of stuff, but I'm talking about something truly different. And yes, we've had some mods to bring that interpretation in, where you can play as the Red Duke, and you can even have some damned knights, and hell, even some evil paladins, and all that type of stuff. Which, yeah, the mod is fantastic. I'm saying through a more official sense, because all that stuff is lore-friendly, that mod is completely lore-friendly. However, imagine if this was released as a free update in a sense, because I don't think anyone would pay for this unless it brought in Malobord, and just kinda got a little bit further expanded upon, not just being a vampire count faction with access to some Bretonian units, but what about if we had a vampire count Bretonia hybrid, or even better yet said, a undead Bretonian faction. This is the thing about the sub-faction feature that we have thanks to the Champions of Chaos, where we could have something very different, and we could have a vampire count faction with its own unique skill tree, tech tree, all that type of stuff. Well, what if that was for Musalon, where we'd have the Bretonian tech tree, but changed around, where instead of just the usual thing where you'd be getting chivalry and all that different type of stuff, everything would be changed to be a darker evil variant. So yeah, you could still confederate all the different Bretonian dukedoms as you'd be turning them evil in a sense. So literally with the same mechanic where you've got the cash there, or you can just declare war on them, but the idea is to be able to confederate them by changing them into undead factions. We know switching buildings is entirely possible now too, considering the fact that we can do that with Kairos and just switch settlements between factions, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. And you'd still recruit paladins and all the sort, but they'd have to do a knight's vow, a questing vow, and a grail vow to the Dark Grail, right? The Black Grail. Make that influence there, where you'd still be using the same assets, the only thing is just completely reskin it. So the skills would be very much the same, the only difference is that it's just an evil version, so the red skill line would focus around boosting up your monsters and obviously whatever Bretonian units you would get. But the idea is to have a faction of vampire counts, but with the mechanics of the Bretonians, completely taking the mechanics of the Bretonians. After which you could start going into, say, for example, the chivalry thing, where that could be changed too and be something completely different. Rather than summoning the Green Knight, though, maybe you'd be able to unlock Malabord if you go all the way to the end, but still taking advantage of all the bonuses, like, you know, extra vow unlocks already with your lords, unit experience, lord recruit rank, corruption, but obviously that changed to adding vampire corruption, extra recruitment rank for evil Bretonian knights, where they just be called Bretonian knights. That's it. They just need that name. And then extra leadership, you know? It's just there. When it comes to construction, nothing would really change in terms of buildings, so we wouldn't have all these buildings that you can see on screen being merged into the vampire count one, because I feel like the vampire count buildings themselves are perfectly fine. The only thing is I would see some things getting changed around just to be able to make the roster a little bit more believable, if that makes any sense. Because it would be a bit far-fetched if we had access to everything, you know, all the Bretonians in an evil form and then all the vampire counts in a evil form too, where once again we'd have access to the evil knights and so on, but what we would lose in the vampire counts would be stuff like the Varghoof, the Terrorgeist, hell, even on the point of gaining, however, would be the Bretonian archers as in the form of thralls. This is something that we already kind of used to. If you've played Mordheim before, they had some people that were able to use bows. Then, of course, you know, Bretonian Knights of the Realm, Grail Knights, but they would be known as Black Grail Knights because this is a throwback to something way back in the day, and you'd get access to the Trebuchet. The idea is that you would be playing a vampire count faction, but with a lot of access to range, and hell, even some artillery too. So you'd be completely mixing up mechanics from both and just having a little bit of fun. Vampires from the Vampire Count faction would not be available to you, so instead you'd have Dark Damsels and Dark Paladins and all that type of stuff, just to have a little bit more of a theming here, because the idea is that you're forming Bretonia into a undead kingdom, well, dukedom, series of dukedoms. This in theory should be very possible now that we know that sub-factions are a thing, so yeah, all it needs to be done is that. Obviously there's a few other things that need to be done too, like for example, giving the Red Duke a unique item, which I thought he had, but it seems that he doesn't here, which is very, very odd. Having a proper voice actor and then some faction effects and lord effects, which would be simple enough, you know, boosting up your cavalry, because that's expected. You're going to be an undead cavalry-focused faction more than anything else, because you'd have access to all the different types of knights, and you know, spreading more vampiric corruption, just the usual stuff here and there, just to have a little bit more fun. Again, the unique technology tree would be very, very important here, as you'd be taking advantage of the fact that you would be so very different, and it would be a economy-focused type of Bretonian faction, more so than a vampire faction. You'd still think of this as a vampire faction, because it is, but they'd play like Bretonians, and I think that's what would add a massive amount of variety, just to kind of change things up, make the sub-factions very unique. Yes, I know I'm rambling a bit here, but Champions of Chaos really did set the bar a lot higher now when it comes to these types of things, so if it's been done for Champions of Chaos, it could be done for the Red Duke. And I'm very much imagining that we will get a Champions of Chaos style DLC for the vampire counts. We spoke about this in a previous video because it makes a lot of sense. And, well, if they need to do something for the FLC standard, if they can't think up of a lord, because we'd expect 4 legendary lords in a vampire count Champions of Chaos style DLC, really that covers all the bases when it comes to all the missing bloodlines, rather than bring in another character, why not just do a radical change to a character that we've had for a while, just really hasn't been updated properly, right? Where we'd have in that style DLC 4 different legendary lords, and then a FLC lord, which everyone already has access to completely for free, so it would be part of the FLC rework, but a completely new faction. I think something that would be really cool, because that would mean that if we do get changes around with a Champions of Chaos style DLC, well, we don't know if this is confirmed or not, but you know what I mean. I'm going with a hypothetical. That means that we'd have an extra type of playstyle too, leading to 6. We'd have the evil Bretonia, we'd have the Von Karsteins, which would need to get a little bit of a change too, the Strigoi, the Lemians, the Blood Dragons. Yes, the Red Duke is a Blood Dragon himself, but he would change himself very similar to that of Luther Harkin being, you know, a Blood Dragon too. And then finally the Necroc. So there'd be a lot to play with here, and I think something like that would just be absolutely amazing. I don't know. This is something that I hope Creative Assembly take into consideration. I do know that they listen to these types of videos, and it would be really, really interesting because, yeah, we've had him for a while. It's the same thing as the whole Toddy situation, but the Red Duke is the one that bothers me the most, because the character's just so cool. But with all that being said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I want to know what you guys think about the Red Duke, how you see him implemented. I know some people would think, oh yeah, just make him a vampire count faction with a little bit of Bretonian and that's it. But I feel a little bit more goes a long way. Again, think about how Be'lakor was introduced for the Immortal Empires campaign. And yeah, kind of works out, you see? He's still a warrior of chaos, but he has a massive incentivization for demons too.